moving a little bit in the sustainable fashion, reuse, reduce, recycle, upcycle, zero waste, slow fashion. You might be familiar with it. Or if you're Japanese, of course, because what am I talking about? Shashiko, which is a form of Japanese needlework, and it has traditionally been used to mend clothes, reinforce fabric, even to layer fabric, to create water-absorbent clothes for firemen. It's not only still relevant in a world dying by the pollution of the fashion industry.
The ice sheets are shrinking.
Cheers! But it's also pretty dang cool to look at. My bike broke, I was far away. It took me almost 3 days to buy a second-hand jean. My original initial plan, which we always make, but somehow never stick to somehow, was to do front and back, and in fact very calculated. Let the front move over to the back seamlessly. Oops. Some people never learn. To make your life a lot easier during this project, I'd recommend taking like super straight leg jeans. And I kind of mean in a 45 degrees from the hem kind of straight. Like or 90 degrees. Oh, maybe don't watch my channel for the mods.
I'm not a scientist.
Point being, I ironed the seam flat to check if it's a straight angle with the hem and keep it nice and flat on the table for the next steps. What I want to do is draw a grid onto the jeans everywhere where I want to have my hand stitches later, which I did not completely set in stone yet. So I'm gonna take my outer leg seam as the reference line, because that one will be a lot straighter than the inner leg seam, and draw all my vertical lines parallel to the side seam. Kind of can decide your own distance in between, but just remember, the smaller the distance, the more stitches, the more time it will take. The more time it will take, the more drama there will be. The more drama there will be, the more tears there will be, and I'll stop here. The inner leg is gonna be having more of a bend, so we will have to draw some shorter lines there as well. And the horizontal lines are gonna parallel to the hem. And mark my words when I say I wanna draw it strong enough so that we can still see the lines later. So I drew on the front panel and the back panel separately, which took me so long that I actually kind of forgot that I wanted to have them blend in seamlessly on the outer leg seam. Okay, surprise, surprise, fast forward, spoiler alert. Personally, I will never get to the back side, but if you do, with a little creativity you can kind of connect the lines like that and it should be sort of lining up. So that was basically the nitty gritty of drawing the gritty. In Shashiko, there's a plethora of patterns that you can choose from, that you can find on this wonderful phenomenon called the Google, which for my younger viewers, it's like the ChatGPT for old people. But it can even find you images. I know, genius. And I wanted to choose a pattern that was not looking too difficult. So it's basically an embroidery technique that uses just straight running stitches. Sounds scary, but don't worry, you can stay on your chair. All it means is that I'm gonna start with straight horizontal stitches, so the pattern is split up in the horizontal and the vertical stitches, and you can either start with one or the other. And apparently I already had trouble in the first row, so yeah, find a length of thread that works for you. The longer, the less often you obviously have to thread the needle, however, the more likely you get knots. And the good thing about this pattern is that the stitches are just simply alternating, one up, one down, one up, one down, etc. So the biggest task is to get the first stitch in your row correctly, and then all the others will follow quite easily. How in the hell we're getting this like wonderful pattern in the end this way is also something I can't really fully grab my non-mathematical brain around. But as with most things, probably best to not overthink it and just put your blind trust in what the internet says. I'm doing first the front panel, but if you're sure you want to do the back, also do them in one go. So I go up one row at the back side of the fabric, either vertically or diagonally, depending on where you are at the pattern, so take a good look on your paper. Because as discussed, the first stitch is rather important. That is, if you, in the best case scenario, don't want to waste a lot of time, and in the worst case scenario, die.
Boy, That escalated quickly.
You can buy special Shashiko thread and needles, but don't ask me where, because that did definitely not sound like something my neighborhood sewing store would have in stock. I'm just using a cotton knitting / crochet yarn. Tried out the variety of needles that I already have, not really knowing which one's really best. With everything in life, after a while it all gets annoying. And mom, if you're watching, I'm not talking about you, but I would say I started with a rather strong choice for this sort of dull needle with a beautiful big eye, just like me, except I have 2 of those. Not to be like that, but anyway. So it's really easy to pull a yarn through. Don't do that with my eyes though, just saying. I wouldn't go for a too short needle though. The idea with this technique is that you load up the fabric onto the needle, folding it over it multiple times, so you can actually speed up the process quite significantly, as opposed to dragging the whole needle up and down for every stitch. Obviously, after 3 days of looking for a jeans, I picked one with an extraordinarily large seam allowance, which was definitely extraordinarily in the way, so make sure to have a little bit of a plan for that. And according to the internet, you don't have to have it perfectly straight. Well, say no more. Yes! Finally my time to shine. I pretty much invented not perfectly straight. I've been drawing lines for hours and now I can't really see what I'm doing and I'm screwing it up. Believe it or not, but yes, the lines that took me hours to draw were slowly, well, I'd say even quickly disappearing from my fabric. See the lines later. I think I cursed myself, but in the end I really had to draw almost every line a second time. So please leave your hot tips in the comments if you know a proper drawing tool that doesn't fade away that quickly from the fabric. So you may wonder, how in Shashiko do you actually start and end your thread? That's funny that you ask, because to be honest, I still don't know if I was doing it right. There is a special way to start and finish your thread without having to do knots on the back, which involves skipping the first few stitches so you can sew them backwards. Knots underneath the fabric, zigzag around those stitches back to where you started to continue your line. That was not even the confusing part, but I still had this first stitch that would really easily come up out of the fabric, so I ended up knotting there anyway. I'd say you can use your usual technique that you use for hand sewing or embroidery to knot off the back. Making some knots will definitely be quicker. Ending the thread, I was also trying to be a good citizen and do this whole zigzag technique, even coming up with some bonus hacks, trying to hide the end of the yarn under the loops of the overlock that was on the seam allowance. In hindsight, it was getting a little bit of an excessive construction just to finish a thread. So check in between, is everybody happy? Double check, is the microphone on? No, it was not. So this was how it was looking. I was probably saying really clever stuff as per usual, but there's unfortunately no way to prove that anymore. So the vertical lines is where the magic happens. The pattern will appear. And I'd say this was for me personally a little bit of the feel-good part, because it made me realize that I might be miserable in a lot of things, but at least I can still count. And you know how long ago it was that I learned that skill?
Wow.
And the pattern came out pretty beautifully. A lot of it starts to make sense now, so you don't have to constantly grab the paper and recount all the stitches you did. Almost get a heart attack because you thought you did it wrong. Recount it again to realize you were right anyway, only to repeat half an hour later. Because at this point you really see where you're going and it kind of explains itself. Well, what did we learn today? Probably don't do this if you wanna try to upload more regularly to your YouTube channel. And somehow my mic dropped off again. But thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe if you like the video. Like the video to support it in the algorithm. Thank you to my Patreon. And peace out. Stay fashion. Or something.